So for this week's learning goal or topic that I'm covering, we are covering how to use technology to support Marzano's eye observation key strategy number one, which is to provide clear learning goals and scales. Now, first off, I'll show you where my resources are, and you click on Guides and Tutorials from simmonsclassroom.com. You'll open up guides.simmonsclassroom.com, and then basically over here on the left-hand side, click on Technology, and then we're looking at key strategy number one. So first off, let's look at what Marzano's support documents say. So looking at this document from Marzano, our design question is, what will I do to establish and communicate learning goals, track student progress, and celebrate success? And what do I typically do to provide clear learning goals and scales? So where can you start with this goal in regards to technology? So the first thing that I'm going to reference is what you do in terms of technology already. Do you already have a website? Do you have a blog site? Do you use Twitter? How do you usually use technology to communicate with students? Because that's really the first obvious place where we're going to make sure that our learning goals are put out there and clear. So you should know by now that I have a couple different websites, and my primary one, my blog site, is simmonsclassroom.com. So as part of this strategy for the week that I'm covering with people, I've actually added a little widget to my blog site. Now, my whole site is hosted with blogger.com, which is through Google, so it's pretty easy to manage, and I added in an HTML or a text box over here on the right-hand side that says that my learning goal for the week for February, that should be 10th through 14th, is that we're going to learn how to use technology to support Marzano's eye observation key strategy number one, which is providing clear learning goals and scales, such as with rubrics. So every time that you come to my webpage, then every time that you log on to simmonsclassroom.com, you're going to see that as what this week's learning goal is. So if you don't have anything out there such as a blog or a website or anything like that, or a Twitter account, then how can you also use technology to kind of feed that into your students' brains? The other option, or the other thing that I've set up, is a Google presentation file. And basically my vision for this would be that every time that I would have a workshop or be working with teachers, that I could, as soon as I turn on my projector, I could have this be my first slide that my teachers would see. So let's fix the typo first, but every time that someone would come into my class, then they would come in and see that this is our goal for this week. Now, if you have a learning goal that you're dealing with daily or weekly or whatever, then that is perfectly fine. You obviously don't have to include the date. That just happens to be how my classroom, per se, works. So what are we talking about when we're talking about these learning goals in general? We're looking for something that's a clear statement of knowledge or info. It does not involve an activity. It's not what the assignment of the week is going to be. It's not what the project of the week is going to be. It is clearly what you're hoping to achieve. Now, obviously, when we're looking at standards, then we could display up on a slide such as this what today's standard is that we're covering. Now, I like using something like this because it doesn't involve having to print out a piece of paper every day, but obviously you could use this kind of data or this kind of file, such as a Google presentation, and then you could always just print off that single slide if you wanted to. So say I just wanted to print off slide 2, which is the slide that applies for today. I could print this off, hang it up on my classroom bulletin board, and that way the kids are getting it through multiple methods. They're getting it through my blog site. I would get it through my presentation screen. As soon as I started up my projector, I would automatically have this show up. Like, I would just do it. It would be my habit. And then they would also see this on the bulletin board for when we're not using the overhead, when we're not using the projector. So keeping that consistency, okay? Also, as we go through this, the goal is to reference the goal often. So every time that you're that you're achieving something that has to do with that goal, reference it, because we should be able to go into the classroom and ask the students, what is your goal for today, or what are you trying to learn? And the kids should be able to know what that is. So referencing it often is going to be a big piece of that. In terms of looking at what the kids should know, I mean, as I just said, when asked, students should be able to explain how their current activities relate to that learning goal. So if they're doing something in your class, make sure that it's clear for what they're trying to learn that day, not just something obviously that's a space filler. And then when asked, students should also explain the meaning of the levels of the performance articulated in a scale or a rubric. Now this is where I think technology can really help you out, is when you look at scales or rubrics. Now, I've been in the classroom for 8 years, and I can tell you that I know that they're hard to really develop a good scale or rubric that's going to be really meaningful and useful. So part of my workshop or my topic of the week is to actually look at some resources for you guys in terms of scales and rubrics. Now, when you are on my guides and tutorials page on here, I have a couple different links to give you some places to start. I'm going to cover 2 of them today, and then hopefully you'll explore the other ones on your own. When my links load properly, I do have a bunch of links coming through an RSS feed from my Dijo account that will load over here on the right hand side. Obviously we're failing on the feed right now, but if you're a Dijo user, then you can log on to Dijo and then find me, and you'll be able to access my bookmarks there. That's just pretty much anything that I find that has to do with this strategy. I bookmark it, will show up here. Under the supporting documentation, I have 2 links to Marzano related stuff. The first one is this document that we've already referenced. Very easy to understand and gives you some clear checklists of what you need to be doing. And then this second one is for their reproducibles that they give when you have an account, which is free, on guiding you through how to do this strategy. So all this stuff is really easy. I like the student progress chart that basically gives the students a way to disseminate what their own goals are, or figure out what their goals are and what they're hoping to achieve with the assignment that you're giving them. And so here we go. If we check this out, the student progress chart, they can fill this in all online. Basically, they write out what their learning goal is, what their score is at the beginning, what they hope their score will be by the end, and then by what date, and then what exactly are they looking to be covering. So these could be easily standards. So you could be talking about specific standards for each one of these little boxes, and then how high do they hope to get. You know, if they're starting out at 0 for a standard, then getting to a 4 might not be as viable as going from like a 2 to a 4. Obviously, it depends on what you're doing. But those are 2 really great links to get you started. And then the good stuff, in my mind, are these 4 links down here, and I'll obviously be adding to them as I can. But the 2 top ones that I sort of wanted to mention are these 2 here. Rubistar, this bottom one, very, very commonly used rubric creator. It's been around for probably since before I started in education, so probably about a decade, although I'm not sure. Very, very easy to use, but I just came across these 2 when researching the content for this presentation, and I think that these are both really great places to start. So let's start with Cathy Schrock. For those of you that are not familiar with her work, she's a really great go-to person in terms of educational technology and pretty much anything. But she has this page on her Guide to Everything website specifically on assessments and rubrics. And why do I like it? With technology, it is very easy to assign a project. It's not always easy to assess that project. And this page actually has a ton, emphasis on ton, of different rubrics and checklists having to do with technology specific things. So for example, if you were doing a podcast with your students and you needed to assess them, here are 6 different podcast rubrics. You could just check those out, see which one might work best for you. If you're doing a presentation, okay, here's a whole link to a presentation rubric over on BIE, and it's really elaborate. It's kind of hard to see on here. I'm not going to take the time to log into my account, which is a free account, but basically you're looking at, you know, some really good things to pay attention to. Are they organized? How about their eyes and their body language? What is their voice like? all those things that we usually look for in a presentation. Perhaps you don't think of it when it comes to the rubric. That's all done for you, really quick and easy. Video project rubrics. There are also a lot of rubrics over here on the left hand side having to do with Common Core. So if you are someone, for example, that is working with ELA, or if you're working with the Park Analytic and Narrative Writing, if you're looking for Common Core checklists, if you're looking for a Common Core rubric creation tool, all that stuff is right here on her website. So it gives you really a one-stop shop for finding a lot of really, really good content. And there are new rubrics being added all the time. I'm not sure of the frequency, but there are a bunch of them. And then there are also some rubrics having to do with teachers themselves, looking at your skills in terms of technology. So this is really the resource that I was the most excited about out of everything that I found. I thought that this was a really good place to go. ePortfolio rubrics. The list literally goes on and on and on. So check out Cathy Schrock's website, which is linked off of my guides and tutorials page from right here. The second one that I wanted to talk about is For All Rubrics, and this one, if you are a big rubrics user, if you're not using For All Rubrics, I think you should really check it out. It can take a little bit of time to set up. The account for teacher level is free. If we put out a whole school-wide level, then it would be we would obviously have to pay for it. But for just a single teacher, basically the idea here is that it gives you a way to grade or assess with rubrics, provide comments, give students accounts that would then show them what their feedback is, and keep track of everything, and then also analyze the data. It seems really overwhelming, but my favorite feature about this is actually that For All Rubrics has a list or has a whole library of rubrics already done for you. So for example, if you are looking at the Common Core, ELA, Literacy, History, Social Studies for grade 10, we can click on here. Here is the rubric. So listing out every standard that we're looking for. Okay, do they have complete understanding? Do they need some more practice? Do they not understand? You can easily apply these to every kid. If you teach a class that this standard is covered in, you could assign this rubric to your class and then come back in and edit it as necessary. The kids, again, can have login rights to see their results, but you don't have to go that far. I created basically a demo account of myself. I don't have access to this from the student side. I didn't enable that. But from a teacher side, it gives me a really good way of just keeping track of where my kiddos are. Then I can print my results through this PDF here. And the little green check boxes obviously tells me where this student would be at, and then gives me a summary at the top of what their score is. So For All Rubrics looks really interesting. If anyone is interested in checking it out, then I certainly can help you set up an account and get everything going. They also integrate with For All Badges, so if you're someone that's looking at gamification or badging in your classroom, then this could be another way of looking at it as well, to reward children when they reach certain levels of understanding within your rubrics. You can then assign them a badge as a little reward. So I think that just about covers it all in terms of what I was hoping to accomplish with this learning strategy for this week. Again, today we were looking at how to use technology to support Marzano's eye observation key strategy number 1, providing clear learning goals and scales such as through rubrics. So there's obviously a lot more to it, but this gives you some good places, I hope, to start. And if you have any questions, comments, if you'd like to bounce some ideas off me, you obviously know where to find me. Just go to simmonsclassroom.com. You can make an appointment with me during my office hours via this tab, and let's get together and talk about it. Thanks so much.